This diagram shows how we usually imagine human history. We picture a straight line, moving reliably upward. We start as primitive societies, form kingdoms, build modern states, and invent complex technologies. We assume tomorrow is an improvement on yesterday. But watch what happens when that line bends back on itself. But what if the very act of achieving progress creates the vulnerabilities that eventually tear a society apart? Over 600 years ago in North Africa, a man named Ibn Khaldun watched kingdoms fracture and dynasties collapse all around him. Instead of writing down a dry list of kings and battles, he asked a surprisingly relevant question. Why do these societies rise, and why do they eventually destroy themselves? He wanted to understand the hidden, repeating mechanisms governing human behavior. Centuries before sociology or political science existed, he was attempting to map the entire life cycle of human civilization. The cycle starts far away from wealth. Imagine a small nomadic community living in a brutally harsh environment. They have no palaces, no complex institutions, and no comfort. Because survival in these extreme conditions is impossible alone, the hardship pulls people together. They share danger and protect one another. Ibn Khaldun called this resulting force Asabiyyah, social solidarity or group cohesion. Notice how the center begins to glow. The daily struggle forces individuals to prioritize the group over themselves. They develop a powerful sense of we, generating massive collective energy ready to be unleashed. Now look at an older, established civilization sitting nearby. It has towering architecture, deep treasuries, and highly specialized labor, but its citizens have grown disconnected from one another. A poor community bound by absolute loyalty will easily conquer a wealthy society that lacks it. Ultimately, material wealth does not equal strength. The highly cohesive outsiders take control and establish a new dynasty. But the act of succeeding changes the psychology of the conquerors. The first generation remembers the desert. They lived through the brutal hardship of conquest, so they keep their discipline and maintain their tight bond with the common people. The second generation consolidates that power. They build administrative institutions and transition from fighting on the battlefield to managing a state. Slowly, they separate themselves from the population they govern. By the third generation, the leaders are born into total luxury. They inherit authority they never had to bleed for. Palaces replace tents, and the intense discipline of their grandparents disappears completely. The prosperity and security that mark a society's absolute peak actually undermine the qualities that made it successful in the first place. As the ruling class adopts a lavish lifestyle, maintaining their massive bureaucracy and professional army becomes extraordinarily expensive. This graph illustrates Ibn Khaldun's economic warning. The horizontal axis represents tax rates, and the vertical axis is economic output. To pay for their expenses, the state heavily taxes its citizens. But as demands push past a certain point, the incentive to work and invest vanishes, and the economy collapses. The sociological damage is even worse. The state provides everything. Citizens become completely dependent on institutions for their security and stop taking personal responsibility for the defense of their own community. Trust evaporates. Competing political factions fight bitterly over a shrinking pool of resources. The public looks at the disconnected, expensive government and stops believing in its right to rule. The empire is entirely hollow. Somewhere on the periphery, a new, poorer, deeply unified group is gathering strength. The society falls, and history begins another cycle. Today, we have wealth that medieval kings could not imagine. We move food across oceans in hours and share information around the globe instantly. Yet alongside these technological miracles, we are dealing with intense loneliness, extreme political polarization, and a rapid fracturing of trust in our institutions. Ibn Khaldun would look at our massive institutions and offer a stark warning. Sophisticated technology cannot save a society if the people operating it no longer feel like they belong to a common project. When a healthy sense of solidarity disappears, human psychology demands a replacement. People form destructive tribes, uniting not through shared sacrifice, but simply through a shared hatred of an opposing group. In 1401, Ibn Khaldun sat down with Timur, one of history's most terrifying conquerors. One man had conquered enormous swathes of the earth. The other had spent his life trying to understand why conquerors eventually lose everything they build. From a lifetime of observation, Khaldun arrived at a sobering reality. Power is temporary. Every empire, dynasty, and civilization has an expiration date. You can pass down physical wealth in a will. You can inherit massive buildings, complex technologies, and political offices, but social cohesion cannot be inherited. History is a mirror showing us that civilization requires constant renewal. Every generation has to actively create trust. Every generation has to rediscover responsibility. If a society forgets that civilization must be continuously earned, the cycle will inevitably claim them too.